Hello, friends. It's good to see you. Welcome to the machine learning track part one. It's good to see you, Polar Void. Welcome, Fancy Appleby. I remember you. Ahmed, welcome. Ted Nuggy. Oh, so good to see everybody in the chat. Oh, Fleabag. Hello again. Welcome. This is the machine learning track for Global Hack Week October. What? We're now just naming them by the months, which I guess was inevitable. Welcome. I'm super excited to have you here. Let me know in the chat. Let's see. The question of the day is a pretty normal one. Have you had any caffeinated beverages today? And if so, how many? And I will confess that I have had probably the equivalent of 1.5 cups of coffee, which is actually a great segue because in 5 hours, 5 hours, I'm doing the Hack Your Coffee little mini event. And so I was actually preparing for that, testing some stuff. We're going to be looking at some fun variables you can tweak when you're making coffee to try to get better results. Yes, the hair is new. I guess if you, let's see, where were we last time? So 2 Global Hack Weeks ago, y'all voted for me to turn my hair blue, and I did. And then 1 Global Hack Week ago, it was, I think, red. And then since then, I've put some henna in it to make it a little bit browner. So it might be red, brown. I don't know. I am colorblind, which I don't know if I admit that regularly on this stream. But yeah, I'm very, very colorblind. Which is, I guess, actually another tie-in. I feel like we've done so many of these that there are so many threads that I want to pull on. So if I reference something from a past live stream that you're like, I wasn't here for that, don't worry. We'll create lots of fresh new memories together. But last time we were looking at art, and we built a model to distinguish the artist based on a piece of art, and it was a lot of fun. You can go back and watch it. I think it's still there. I did promise somebody that I would give a tour of the art that I have in my house because I'm going through a Japanese block print phase, and I'm very into Japanese block prints. And somebody asked me to do a tour of that, and I didn't because I was feeling sick on the last day. But if that person is still here, they're still like, Will, show me some art, then I will try to make good on that promise this time. But yeah, oh my goodness, Aphrodite, I'm so excited that you are excited to be part of this ML track. Nikhil had 6 coffees so far. I'm having a 7th. Those are not rookie numbers. That's pretty intense. I wish you luck. I guess I should do the thing where I show comments on the stream, shouldn't I? 6 coffees so far, having a 7th. That's intense. Hello, Pompalock or Pompal? Okay, I don't know. Dead Nuggy, I believe this is in response to the offer to do a tour of art in my house. So yeah, we'll do an art tour. Maybe I like to do that on the last day, so there's something to look forward to. Polar Void was one of them. Yeah, Polar Void is part of the core ML squad. Always pulling through. Cool. Ayush, so good to have you joining from India. Excited you're here. We're gonna have a good time. Polar Void, I'm not even going to talk about, all I'll say is last time there was an incident, and that is why actually the 4th episode of the machine learning track doesn't exist for last year, or for last Global Hack Week. If you go back and try to find it, it was deleted shortly after, but no worries there. But yeah, I guess we're 5 minutes past the hour. So my name is Will. I am a software engineer at Google. I'm also a coach here at Major League Hacking. I am a Python nerd. And I am also really caffeinated and gonna become even more caffeinated. But this time we're gonna look at sarcasm, and we'll talk more about sarcasm and irony and all that stuff. But so actually, last month. At the very end, in the forum, I sent out a bunch of forums asking for people to tell me how things went, if they have any feedback. And one of the things I asked was, hey, what do you want to learn about next time? And I got lots of different thoughts. We got comments of, we should do video analysis, which might be hard, but we can talk about why. But then I got several people saying, I really like the natural language processing stuff. And so for folks that are kind of new to machine learning, natural language processing is just doing machine learning on human-generated language. Right? So when I talk, that's natural language. And when I type out a sentence, that's natural language. And so I got a few folks asking for more of that. And so I am a servant to the people, and I really do care about the feedback. And so that is why this time we are tackling sarcasm, and we are going to basically try to build a model that can tell if a statement is sarcastic or not. And we'll get way more into all of that. Later in this stream, we will do a gentle reintroduction to Python, but we're actually going to start out by talking about linguistics because it's really important for our task going forward. Okay, cool. We're not leaking any sensitive documents. Oh, Vimal, I'm so excited to hear that you're pumped. It's good to have you here. Fancy Appleby wants to know if I'll use my swear pass. Yeah, so I have invented that I get one swear per Global Hack Week, and I try to use it judiciously. And I don't think I used it last time. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I probably will. Welcome from Chennai. Aphrodite, your main focus of interest is NLP. That's great. I'd love to hear more about what you do with NLP. I'd love to hear other people's machine learning experiences. Cool. Oh, yes. Yeah, my LinkedIn is at W. Liffert. You can find me basically everywhere on the internet at the handle W. Liffert. You could also, I think, actually seek out my TED Talk, which I'm only bringing up because it is relevant here. We'll maybe talk more about it next time. I'll drop the link to it at the end of this session, and you can watch it before the next one if you want to. And we might chat about how the work I did for my senior project in college kind of ties into what we're doing here. But good stuff. Okay, I think we're gonna launch in. So yeah, I'm actually gonna pull up Colab just to have a surface to type on. So for those of you who have not joined us before, there is a really great site called collab.research.google.com that gives us basically a little sandbox to do a lot of experimentation. It's really common for, really what it is it's a thing called Jupyter Notebooks, but Google hosts it for you. So if you want to do Jupyter Notebooks, that's great too. But it is basically just a sandbox for us to play around in, and it's really common for machine learning practitioners and scientists to do a lot of their work in a notebook. So either Jupyter Notebooks or Colab, they're basically the same thing. Call Me Kiki asked, what are we going to learn today? And we're really going to cover two things. One, I'm going to give myself maybe 20 to 30 minutes to spiel about linguistics. If you try, you can get me to talk for longer because I'm a huge linguistics nerd. But so we're going to talk about linguistics, which is really the basis that we need to later build an AI model to try to identify sarcasm. It's going to give us a lot of helpful context. And then we're going to spend maybe an hour doing a gentle reintroduction to Python. It's something I start every machine learning track with. So if you are coming for the first time and you've never written a line of code, hopefully you can follow along for, hopefully most of the track. And maybe you code regularly in another language, and so the reintroduction to Python is just a nice way to get you back into it. And I like not throwing anything too complicated or complex at you. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to come here. I dropped the link to collab.research.google, and I'm going to click New Notebook. Oh, also normal housekeeping stuff. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'll monitor it. If I'm talking too fast, you can let me know. I don't stream that much. I stream for Global Hack Week, and so if you're like, wait, Will, you're talking as if we can see your screen and we can't, you can absolutely tell me that. Which, speaking of, why don't I actually share my screen? Awesome. So we'll call this one, I don't know, we'll just call it part one. Sweet. So we're going to talk about, oh, your screen is not visible. That's interesting because it looks like, I don't know, can you see me type hello world? Okay, cool. I guess there might be a little bit of delay in the comments, but yes. Okay, so the screen hopefully now is visible. Oh, wait, hold on, wait. You attended you did attend the BigQuery stream. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Oh, I love that everybody's actually like chiming in. It's great to have engagement. Okay, cool. So, pardon me while I juggle some tabs. Oh, also really important, if you're here, you should totally check in. And I'll drop the link to check in the chat. Check in, get your credit, get your guild points or whatever. I'll admit I'm not as integrated into the into the whatever the point system is for Global Hack Week. But I do support it, and get your bag. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna continue juggling tabs until I get the one that I want. It's not that one. Okay, here we are. So yeah, as I said last time, I'm gonna keep juggling actually for another like 2 seconds. Please forgive me. Actually, as an aside, can I confess something? So I went from 4 monitors, and I'm now down to 3. And I know this is like the most like, I don't know, like not a real problem because 3 monitors is still a lot of monitors. But I'm like now having this sensation of like, wait, I don't have enough space to have my 17 different windows up at the same time. Because actually, to continue this tangent, I built this desk behind us, and I made a spot for my boyfriend who lives in Boston but regularly comes in to spend a week or here or there in Seattle. So I wanted to give him a desk with a monitor. So the moral of the story is I'm a good boyfriend, and it means I have less screen real estate. So give me a break. Let's see. Oh yes, I say Monesha. This is mostly, I would say most folks tune in from Twitch. You are more than welcome to tune in from YouTube though. I look at all the comments and will still respond. Let's see, should we create something while learning? Yach, yes. We will, over the course of the week, we will build a whole model. Because machine learning can get kind of academic, we usually spend the first session kind of just learning and talking about stuff. And then usually by session 2 or 3, we're getting into it and actually building something. Let's see, Shizu asked, is this track beginner friendly? And I would like to think, my goal is to at least make the first 3 sessions really quite beginner friendly. And then often on the 4th and final track, we kind of throw out a bunch of things at our problem we're working on. Somebody asked what time it is for me. It's 11:13 right now, so it's still the morning. I believe the YouTube channel is just called Major League Hacking. I don't have I guess I technically have a YouTube channel. I don't really put things on it. There are like a few like personal projects. Cool. Will the videos be available to watch later? Yes, yeah. So they should. I believe the rule is that for 90 days, they're available on Twitch, and so you can go back and find them. But yeah, they'll be available. If I don't do anything too bad on stream, the stream should continue to exist. Okay. Love all the engagement. So good to have all of you here. Let's get going on linguistics. So linguistics is, it's the study of human language, like language and how humans use it, right? This is a really big field. So this is actually quick intro to Colab. You can create both code and text blocks, and the text blocks will give you a nice little rendering. So I'm just going to write out some notes as I'm thinking through this. So linguistics is the study of language and how humans use it. It's a really broad field, and we're going to be sampling little bits of it in our project this week. One like big thought that I'll throw out is sometimes people make this distinction of linguistics being prescriptivist versus descriptivist, which those words might be hard to understand the difference between. Prescriptivist, can I even spell it? Prescriptive versus descriptive. And this is like the idea of, oh, am I telling you how you should use language versus am I just trying to describe how people use it in the real world? And I want to make it very clear that we're just being descriptive. We're not dealing with I'm not going to tell you how you should talk, right? Or how you should write. We're not like teaching grammar here. We're just looking at how do people use language. Polar Void, thank you for dropping the link to Colab again. Johannes, you have not really missed anything. We're really just getting going on this intro to linguistics. And I will actually share you can follow along. Let's see, share with anyone with the link. I'll drop that in the chat. So you can actually see me coding live. So we're not telling you how you should talk or how you should think about language. We're just trying to describe how people tend to do it. That's kind of our first description here. Our first breakdown is sort of telling you how you should talk, right? Whereas descriptive is just describing how people do talk/write. And this is like a helpful one just to keep in mind as we go forward. But the big, interesting, important thing that I want to talk about today is the difference between semantics and pragmatics. And I want to say, I know that we're getting academic and nerdy here, and this is really probably the nerdiest we're going to get for the whole stream. So if you're like, wow, I just wanted to learn how to do a linear regression algorithm, we will get to that sort of thing. But give me 15 more minutes just to be a nerd about linguistics, because it's really going to be helpful for us later on. So semantics and pragmatics is our kind of next big category. Now, these are words you may have heard before. They might register for you, like, oh yeah, like arguing about semantics is a thing, and oh, people talk about being pragmatic, and maybe these words mean something. But this is kind of an oversimplification, but ultimately, semantics is about what words mean, and pragmatics is more about the context, about what people are trying to do with their language. And we'll dive in and we'll look at some examples. So one of my favorite semantics examples is if you have ever asked a teacher if you can go to the bathroom, and they say, oh, I don't know, can you go to the bathroom? This is like a classic case of I would say unfunny joke about semantics, right? That they're razzing you about, well, what does the word may and can, like what do those words mean, right? And so your teacher would say, well, there's a semantic distinction between can and may, and oh, can means do you have the ability to, and may means are you allowed to, or something like that. I don't know. Drop in the chat if you've ever asked somebody if you can go to the bathroom and they've been like, I don't know, can you? Because it happened way more than I would like to admit to me as a child going through the U.S. public education system. No shade to my teachers; they're all great, love them, but they always thought that joke was funny, and it never was. But so this is one example of semantics, because these words have different meanings, and we can argue about that, right? Yes, I know. I'm trying to be more responsive with the jump into talking head and then punching back in. But another fun usage of semantics is word embeddings. If you've never heard of word embeddings before, don't worry. But the really short version is it is a way of expressing a word in numbers, but it expresses that word semantically. So there's like a great example of this. I'm just going to Google word embeddings, king, queen, man, woman, and we'll probably get a good. Okay, this is like the one example that everybody pulls up. Let me see if I can find a better. Okay, this is probably going to be grainy as heck, but this is fine. Open image in new tab. Okay, hopefully this is visible. Now, I apologize for the gendered nature of this example, but it is like the one example that everybody brings up. And this is, you can imagine that this is a 2D grid, and all of these words fall somewhere on the grid, right? And so you have king in the upper left-hand corner, queen in the upper right-hand corner, man in the bottom left-hand corner, woman in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is really a semantic visualization of these words. And the way that I'll walk you through this is, okay, all these words exist on a grid. But the difference between man and king is, in this case, the same as the difference between woman and queen, right? They even have drawn out here in this little blue arrow, royal, right? So if you add royalness, which is a semantic idea, to man, you end up with king. And if you add royalness to woman, you end up with queen. You can also see this other direction of femaleness, right? So if you add femaleness to king, you get queen. If you add femaleness to man, you get woman. And you could do all sorts of math here, right? Oh yes, Ninja Master asks, may I go to the washroom? And I would say, yes, you may go to the washroom. Polar Void also gives you permission. But yes, I mean, there are lots of words for this kind of thing. You have word vectors, word embeddings. But the main thing is that this kind of system is concerned with what the words mean, right? What is kingness and what is femaleness and what is womanness and all these things. And that is our little blurb on semantics, right? So to kind of summarize, semantics is concerned with what words mean. Pragmatics, on the other hand, is really concerned with how people are using words and what the language is supposed to do. And I think that there is a really good example of this. Okay, yeah, here's the example that I'll use. Say we have two speakers. We have Alice and Bob. Here, I'll just say pragmatics. We'll have under here. Two speakers, Alice and Bob. We're stealing Alice and Bob from cybersecurity. And so Alice and Bob are having a conversation, right? And I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios. So scenario one, we're just going to say Bob says, well, oh my goodness, can I type today? Well, he's really nice. And so the question I want to ask is Bob saying something positive? And in this case, given no extra context, I would say yes, positive, right? We could say positive sentiment as a call out from a couple Global Hack weeks ago. But we think that Bob's probably saying something nice here, right? Okay, I want to do scenario two. And ask questions about this. I know we're getting deep into semantics and pragmatics. And so if there's anything that's confusing or you're like, even if you want to ask why is this valuable, which we'll get to, we can talk more about it. But scenario two, Alice says, hey, how did you like that guy you went on a date with? And Bob is, again, we're going to have Bob say literally the same thing. And so again, I'm going to ask, okay, is what Bob just said, is this a positive or negative thing? And I'm going to say again, this seems like, I mean, maybe you could argue it, but based on just the text here, I would say, yeah, he's saying something positive, right? Yeah, a couple of Global Hack weeks ago. Okay, finally, I'm going to do one more scenario that hopefully makes things more interesting. So scenario three, we're going to have Alice say, hey, I'm looking for an accountant. Does your accountant have a good understanding of tax law? This is a much different kind of prompt. And again, we're going to have Bob say the exact same thing. So now the question is, just like before, is this a positive or a negative sentiment? So I'm going to play out the scene. This is Alice. Hey, I'm looking for an accountant. Does your accountant have a good understanding of federal tax law? Bob says, well, he's really nice, right? It is the exact same statement. But I think you have to admit, well, if somebody's asking you, does somebody have a good understanding of federal tax law? And you're like, well, they're nice. This is not actually a positive thing, right? Yeah, exactly. Polar void, you're absolutely correct. We'd probably say this is negative sentiment. And this, I think, is a really, really good illustration because the thing that Bob is saying has not changed at all. All we've changed is the context, right? Okay, so after you said maybe neutral sentiment, and I think maybe you could make the case that, oh yeah, like he's just trying to not weigh in. And maybe this gets at some of the complexity here, but the context of if somebody asks you, is somebody good at federal tax law, and you say they're really nice, by not actually weighing in, you really are suggesting that you can't say something nice about them. You can't actually say, yes, they're great at federal tax law. So this is the fact that all we're doing is changing the context, and we think the meaning here is changing, is a really good sign that we're looking at pragmatics. Again, pragmatics is like, do you care about the context that things happen in? And we could get even further. I know I have 4 more minutes before we hit our 30-minute mark for me to spiel about linguistics. There's a thing called, oh yeah, somebody asked if I could scroll up a little bit. Absolutely. There's a thing called Grice's 3 maxims. And honestly, the first 2 maxims are great, and the third one is kind of a sleeper. But so the Grice's maxims are these ideas of whenever you're talking to someone, there are these rules that you obey. And the first one is called the maxim of quality. And really what it just means is if you're in a conversation, nobody is supposed to lie, right? This is kind of a simple, like, yeah, obviously you're not supposed to lie, right? But that if we're talking, there's this unspoken agreement that what we're doing here, we should at least say that we're not lying, right? This is why it's kind of funny when somebody says, now I'll be honest, and they say something. And it kind of raises the question like, wait, are you not normally honest? Don't we kind of always assume that everyone should be honest? And so if somebody lies in a conversation, that is violating the maxim of quality. The second maxim is called the maxim of quantity, which is the idea that you're supposed to give, we assume that you will give as much information as is useful and relevant. And this is a little bit of a, we're doing a really deep cut here. So if you're not a linguistics nerd, don't worry. You don't have to, like, the rest of this session will be good, even if you're not into linguistics. But the core here is like if I say that I have 10 watermelons, and you ask me how many watermelons I have, and I say I have 7 watermelons, is it false that I have 7 watermelons? Well, no, it's not false. I do actually have 7 watermelons. I just have 3 additional watermelons, right? So I haven't lied to you. And yet you would say that what I just did was weird because you kind of assume that I will give you as much information as is useful. And if you're asking me how many watermelons I have, really you want to know, like, what is the maximum number of watermelons that you could say you have? And so that would be a violation of the maxim of quantity. Ryo says everything is flying over their head, and we'll get much more concrete, and the rest of this session we'll just slip into we'll slip into just getting down to some Python basics in 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes left. But so in this scenario up here, where I ask you, or when Alice asks Bob, does your accountant have a good understanding of tax law? This response, well, he's really nice, is really kind of violating the maxim of quantity, right? If you had, the most useful thing would be to weigh in on his understanding of tax law, but because you're not doing that, it kind of sends this signal that something weird is going on. Now, all of this, I'm done spieling about linguistics, at least for today. But all of this gets us to this place where we can talk about sarcasm. And really what we're going to talk about for our model is really irony. And I'm actually going to put this up in big letters. We're going to say irony. It's really important that you kind of pick your own definitions for things when you're doing these kinds of projects, and you all agree. And so our definition of irony is when the real meaning of a statement is concealed or contradicted by the words used. So whenever you're not really saying what you actually mean, this is a case of irony. And so in our example above, Bob is saying his tax accountant is really nice, but what he really means is that he's not very good at tax law, right? So that would be a great use of, or a great example case of irony. And sarcasm is really a classic example of irony, where you say, my announcement in the chat was, I'm not excited to be here for Global Hack Week, by which of course I mean I'm super pumped and I'm just making a joke, right? And the reason that I'm putting this out here is because I want us to all participate in putting together a data set together. So I am actually going to drop a link, a Google form, into the chat. And I would love it if y'all would join in with me and contribute some samples to our data set. Oh yeah, random aside, some folks are asking about like hardware stats for doing machine learning. They mentioned they have an i3 and 4 gigabytes of RAM. I think they got some great answers in the chat, which is so much of machine learning is done. Actually, like Colab is a great example where you don't have to have, you could be running Colab off of your like Motorola flip phone, and it should actually still work because you're not actually doing any of the heavy computing on your computer. which I think is a great answer. Also, a lot of models that actually are really useful are really not that compute intensive, which we can talk about a little bit maybe tomorrow. But yeah, great answers to that question. Thanks, community, for being there. So I dropped this form, and so I'm actually going to pull it up here. So this is just for us to participate in creating a data set together. So this is our definition of irony that we used before. The statement is said to be ironic when the real meaning of the statement is concealed or contradicted by the words used. So when you're not really saying what you mean. So you can say, yes, I understand. And then in order to build a data set together, we can all contribute our own sort of ideas about irony. And so we're asking you to write an ironic statement and then a statement that could be used in kind of the same way, but is not ironic. So like, okay, here's a case of me trying to be ironic. And I could say, OMG, coffee is my least favorite beverage. I would never, ever be caught dead drinking coffee. So this is a case where I am being ironic and I am weighing in on coffee, saying that I hate it. But I really actually love coffee, right? So then for this second case, they're saying, now write a statement that can be used in the same scenario that is not ironic. And I would say, I really enjoy coffee. I think it's really tasty. That's just kind of the same thing, weighing in on coffee, but now not being ironic. And then this is, so you're actually allowed to submit as many of these as you want, and we'll have I'll actually look and see who submitted the most, and I will do some call outs for folks that submitted several. I would say don't submit more than like, I don't know, 10 maybe. But I'll say anybody who submits 10 of these will get a shout out on next stream. And just try to make the different statements kind of as different as possible. But so this is a way for us to crowdsource some samples. And that's why I had to kind of walk through what do we mean by sarcasm. And hopefully we'll get like a cool data set together that we've built as a community that we can use later in the week. So I'm going to hit submit, and we're off to the races. Okay, cool. Somebody asked if we have to fill out this form, and absolutely not. Polar Void said, did you do a basic voice while typing that? I mean, I don't know. I feel like when I'm typing something out, I'm more likely to be monotonous and monotone. Fleabag asks, how is irony and sarcasm different? Yeah, this is a great question. And I will say that irony is really a big category, and sarcasm is a type of irony. So irony is really that general case where what you really mean and what you're saying is not exactly the same, right? Sarcasm is kind of a subset where you are specifically being usually you are being negative towards something, right? Usually you are being, I mean, I think the definition that I looked up for sarcasm is like, actually, let's just pull it up. Sarcasm definition. The use of irony to mock or convey contempt. So that I think is a really good example. It literally says it's a type of irony, or it's using irony to mock or convey contempt. So it's kind of when you're being rude or like mean using irony. But there are other cases where you could be ironic. I mean, like for example, in my case where I was being ironic about coffee, I wasn't actually being mean to anybody. I wasn't saying, I wasn't saying, go die or whatever. I was just being coy about my like of coffee. But it's a good question. Somebody asked, do we have to fill out this form? No, you don't have to fill out the form, and you don't have to fill it out right now. You can fill it out later. You don't have to fill it out at all. But it's kind of a fun thing for us to do together. I will have an actual data set we'll use for training our model later, so don't worry about that one. But yeah, that's our little spiel on irony. So now for the next, I guess basically an hour, we're going to do our gentle reintroduction to Python. So Python I'm a big Python fan. It's a great language to use for machine learning. It's one that you see machine learning practitioners use a lot, and I would say there are a couple reasons for that. One is because there are so many useful libraries written for Python. So using these libraries like TensorFlow and PyTorch are these really powerful machine learning tools. And they're all written to work with Python really, really seamlessly. In many cases, they're written in Python. The other case is that Python is just a really fast language to code in. There's this kind of trade-off of some languages are slow to code in, but are slow to write, but run really, really fast. And some languages are really fast to write, but might be slower when you actually run them. And Python, in some sense, falls into this second category, where it's really fast to write, to do whatever you want to do in Python, but the code you write might end up being slower, which in a lot of cases is a problem. But for machine learning, it actually usually isn't, because so often you are actually having the hard work not actually being done by your programming language. The hard work is actually being shilled out to, to a number of things, to specific drivers, to modules written in other languages, to your GPU. If all of that went over your head, don't worry about it. But the upshot is Python is a great language, and it's one we use a lot in machine learning. And so that's why today we're going to do our little introduction to Python. Intro to Python. Actually, let's make that some big text. Intro to Python. Boom. Aphrodite says some great libraries and packages support for ML. Absolutely. Oh, remember to stay hydrated, friends. Whew. Okay. So we're going to get into our intro to Python. I'm going to start really slow and gradually pick up steam, but please let me know if I'm going too fast. This session really is for folks that are not comfortable coding in Python. So if you're like, oh, I don't want to slow things down because I don't know Python, please do, because this session is for you, right? So if anybody tells me, hey, could you re-explain that? I'm going to do that, because today is all about just getting back up to speed with Python. So the first basic thing we can do actually, before we get into it, let's do a little straw poll. Weigh in on your comfort level with Python. Let's give me a 0 if you have never heard of Python and you've never programmed in any language ever. Give me a 1 if you're like aware of Python, maybe you've written a line or two. Give me a 2 if you're like, yeah, I feel pretty good about my Python, I've written some Python. And then give me a 3 if you're like, I am a Python pro. So we'll say 0 is, and just enter this in the chat. Just throw a number down in the chat. So 0 is never heard of Python, never programmed at all. 1 is heard of Python, maybe written a few lines. 2 is I write Python and I'm pretty comfortable. 3 is I'm Python pro. And we'll say 4 is I'm literally Guido van Rossum, who, if you're not familiar, is the inventor of Python. Okay, awesome. So I see a couple 1s, which is great. Oh, I love how much people are actually chiming in and jumping in here. Okay, sweet. So first of all, it is great that everybody's chiming in. It's also great that we have sort of a breadth of experience. So I would say if you are a 1 or a 1.5, please ask those questions in the chat, because this session is for you. If you are a 2 or a 2.5 or a 3, first of all, I'm so thrilled that you're still here. And I would like to deputize all of you to jump in the chat if you see questions, help other folks out, so we can kind of all get up to speed on Python. Cloud Nothing was mentioned. I haven't progressed past decorators, which is dope. Decorators are really cool. And we will not even be getting to decorators in this session. But that's sick that you are hopefully like proficient in decorators. Polar Void says 3.00. What is that, like 12 zeros and then a 4? Awesome. Well, it sounds like we are in great shape, and we'll jump in. So the first basic thing we can do in really any programming language is tell our computer to remember some data. And we tell the computer to remember data in variables. And there are really 4 big kinds of data that we're going to store in variables in Python, at least right now. So we can define a variable by giving it a name, and we can use letters and underscores in our names. You can also use numbers, but it can't start with a number. And then you use the equal sign, and this is not really an equality sign. This is an assignment operator is the term we use. And so it really says, put whatever is on the right-hand side of the equal sign into the variable on the left-hand side. So right here, we're saying put the number 6 into the variable called my integer. An integer is sort of our first most basic data type, is it's just a number and it's a whole number at that. Oh, where were you during my Python coding midterm today? Oh my goodness, I hope it went well. I don't know. I'm sending positive vibes for how that went. But I'm thrilled that you're here with us now. Okay, so integer is sort of our basic data type. It's just a whole number. We have floating point numbers, which are just numbers that have decimal parts. So we could say my floating point number equals, we can say 3.14. So because you have this decimal part here, it's not an integer, it's a float. We can create strings, which are just bits of text. So I can say my string is equal to hello world with a little exclamation point. So here's a really important detail is here we're wrapping our text inside quote marks. In Python, you can use double quotes or single quotes. They act just the same. Fun fact, I work at Google and we have just an internal style guide that just says always use single quotes, just keep it consistent. So that's what I end up doing, but both of them are totally valid. Let's see, Anna said, will this Google Colab be shared with the attendees after the stream? Yes, I will post this to GitHub, and I will also share it with you live right now, so you can actually follow along and copy if you want. Okay, so string is our third data type. Note that our numbers, we don't have to wrap in anything. So Python will, by default, if you just have some numbers, it'll just assume it's a number. But if you wrap it in quotes, it'll say, oh, this is special, this is text, and I'm not meant to think about it like a number. And then our final variable type that we look at, or data type that we look at, is called a Boolean. So we can say my Boolean, use that equal sign, and a Boolean is just true or false. It's our fancy computer science word for true or false. So we can just literally type out true. And notice that here, we don't have to wrap it in quote marks. This is just it's a special word in Python that means true, or you could say false. But you do have to use a capital T or capital F. Okay, this is a great opportunity. If there are any guilds out there that are recruiting, we have a new recruit that is dedicated to learning Python and machine learning. So looks like a great potential recruit for your guild. Here, I'll leave that up for a little bit longer if folks want to send invites to guilds. Sweet. So we've created 4 variables, but hey, what if we want to see what's inside our variable? Well, there are a couple ways of doing it, but Colab makes it really easy. Is you can just write your variable at the very end, and this will show us what's inside the variable. So if I hit run here, this will run all of our code. And so we see 6. So inside my integer is 6. Great. Oh, this all really should be commented. So you can even separate variables by commas, and you can see what's inside multiple variables. So we could say, show me what's inside my integer, my floating point number, my string, and my Boolean. And there you go. We have 6, 3.4, hello world, again in those quotes. And here we have false without any quotes. Oh yeah, somebody asked me if I approve of Blahaj Gang, and yes, I think I am technically a member of Blahaj Gang. I think I'm like in the Discord. I actually, I have a confession to make. I was at IKEA a couple of days ago, and they've been out of stock of Blahaj in a while, and they were in stock, and I thought, ooh, should I get it? But I didn't because I figured I really should do this live on stream at some point. But yes, Will approves of Blahaj Gang. Will approves of any guild that is attending the machine learning track, to be clear. Okay, so we've covered variables and our 4 basic data types. Well, what can we do with them? So the big, sort of basic level here is with integers and with floating point numbers, you can do all sorts of arithmetic. So let's say we have 2 numbers, A is equal to 25 and B is equal to 5. And so we can say A minus B, let's say A plus B, just with a regular plus sign, and 30 comes out. Great. We could do A minus B, and we get 20. Awesome. We can use an asterisk to do multiplication, and then we get 125. So that's multiplying 25 and 5 together. And then we can do a divided by b, and we get 5, because 25 divided by 5 is 5. Interesting point here is when we divide two integers, we actually get a float out. And Python does this because, well, sometimes there's a fractional part. If you want to, and I don't want to get too in the weeds or complicated, but you can actually use two division signs right after each other, and that actually tells Python, give me an integer in return. So this is called integer division. Boom, and we get 5. And I'll do that thing where you pull a cake out of the oven during your baking show, just so there's like a full version of what I'm doing here. Boom. So there's really all of our basic arithmetic operations. And so you can see all of those come out like expected. Let's see, Python 3 specific. Oh, you know what? It's been long enough. I'm not even going to pretend like Python 2 exists. Yeah, this is, I guess, something you learn about is there used to be a thing called Python 2, and you should really, if you see anything in Python 2, you should run away because it is old news. It's been deprecated for a long time. And yeah, we're not going to talk about Python 2 here. I learned Python in Python 2 back in the dark ages, but yeah, we're here in Python 3 land. Let's see. Yeah, we could talk about modulo. That one gets a little bit complicated. I might only bring it up if we need it. Let's see. Integer division. Oh yeah, okay. So integer division. A integer divided by b. So this is if you do two. So normally division will take in, if you give it two integers, it will give you a float in response, excuse me, because there might be a fractional part, right? So what if it's like 10 divided by 3? Well, you end up with, there's like 3.33333, and that's not an integer, that's a float, right? But if you want to say, always give me an integer back, you can do double slash, and that guarantees that the thing Python gives you is an integer, and it just throws away any fractional part. So in this case, it just throws away that 0. But you know, for example, if we pick this up to 26, okay, you get 5.2 is the normal division, a divided by b, but it's just 5 for a integer divided by b. Integer divided. Google Foobar uses Python for 2.7. I don't know what Google Foobar is. Is that like an online coding challenge or something? I don't know. You can give me more deets. Yeah, integer division is cool. Another detail is, again, we're in Python 3 land, but Python will do order of operations for you. So by default, it'll preference multiplication and division over addition and subtraction. So just as a random example, if we have, let's say, 4 times 2 minus 1. So if we did 4 times 2 first, then that'd be 8. And if we subtract 1, then we get 7. If, on the other hand, if we do 2 minus 1 first, we get 1. And 4 times 1 is just 4. But if we run this, we see that Python, I mean, in this case, it's easy because you're both doing the multiplication first. It's also on the left-hand side. What if we change this to be 1 minus 4 times 2? So in this case, if we do the multiplication first, we get 8. And if we subtract 8 from 1, then we get negative 7. But if you do the 1 minus 4 first, then you get, what is that? Negative 3, and negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. But if we run this, we see we get negative 7. So Python knows the multiplication is supposed to happen first, which is neat. Let's see. You can also use parentheses to kind of force the order you want. I don't want to go. We're getting pretty deep on arithmetic. There's a lot of cool ways you can do arithmetic in Python, including you can use parentheses. So like one example that I'll just drop in here is using parentheses. So in this case, if you just did it all sort of straight, you would first get 12 minus 6 is 6, and then divided by 2 is 3.
But in this other case, if you first divide 6 by 2, you're left with 3, and 12 minus 3 is 9. So parentheses work, and it makes Python evaluate sort of what's inside the parentheses first, just like in math. So if you've taken an algebra class, none of this should be super surprising. Okay, awesome. Another really fun tool is the actually I'm not sure what they're called, but the plus equals times equals operators. So one normal thing that we can do is, like, let's say I have a variable called day of the month, and that's equal to 23 because it's the 23rd of October right now. And so a quote unquote normal way that we would update this value, say it's, a day has passed and we want to update it, is you can say that the day of the month is equal to whatever the day of the month used to be plus 1, right? So what's happening here is first we create a variable called day of the month, and then we say take whatever is inside day of the month, add 1 to it, and then put it back inside day of the month. And so if we come down at the bottom, if you run day of the month, we get 24. Okay, so this is a little bit funky, but if you kind of reread this, it should make sense. We're first creating a variable with 23 in it, and then we're taking 23 out of the box, adding 1 to it, and then putting it back in the box. And later when we check the box, it's 24. But this is such a common pattern where you want to take the value of something, change it, and then put it back in the variable, that Python gives us a special way of doing this. So if you just want to add 1 to something, you don't have to reference it again. You can just use the plus equals operator. And this basically says whatever is inside day of the month, add 1 to it. And so if you run that, we get the same thing. So the plus equals is really helpful. Another one that you will see is the multiplication equals. So if we have x equals 10, and then we say x times equals 3, and then we check to see what's inside x, there we get 30. So it's saying whatever is inside x, multiply it by 3, and then put it back inside x. Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about strings. We'll keep the string conversation really short, just because. Actually, no, we're doing NLP. We'll do a full strings deal. Okay, so as we talked about before, you can create a string. So, like, let's say my name I typed today is equal to Will. So this is saying create a string called Will and store it inside a variable called my name. So now often the thing that we'll want to do is we'll want to put some different text together. So if we're like printing out a log message or we want to print out an error, often you want to add strings together. And so one way we could do this is we could say, pardon me. We could say hello, and then add a plus sign after it, and then we could use our variable my name. And if we run that, we'll get hello Will. Notice I had to put in the space myself. Python does not give you spaces for free, so if you want a space in between the words, you need to put it there. If I didn't, it would just say hello Will. And this is just fine, right? So for example, we can say greeting equals hello plus my name, and then we can print that greeting. And the thing that's cool about this is you can come back and you could change the name here. I could say polar void. I know I'm not spelling it correctly, but whatever. And it says hello polar void. And this is cool. But an even cooler way to do this is to use what's called a format string. So this is just called string concatenation, and it's pretty normal. You add strings together, big whoop. But what you can also do is, so we can still use the my name variable, but you can create a format string starting with an F, and then put your single quotes there, and you can say, hello, my name, and then exclamation point. Now, this is not a full format string yet, because what you do is you wrap any variable names in curly brackets. And what this does is it tells Python, hey, I have this string, but inside the curly braces, I have a variable that I want you to go and grab and put here. And so if we run this, we get hello polar void. And so format strings are often just a kind of a nicer way to, if you have a message, but you need to get a variable inside your message, to do that pretty seamlessly. Cool. Okay, yeah, actually, multiplying strings is a fun one. So there are some things that feel even weird that you can do in Python. So like, for example, you can actually multiply a string by a number. One thing you can't do is you can't add a string to a number. If I say hello plus 4, Python whines about this, and it says this is not a good way for me to try to add a number to a string. You can turn that number into a string, and then it works fine, but you can't just add a number to a string. But what you can do, that Polar Void threw out, is you can multiply a string by a number. So you can say hello times 4, and you get hello, 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 hello. What you can also do that he threw out is you could say, in this case, you could say nah times 4, and then add the string Batman. I guess I'll add a space in there, and you get na 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 Batman. Very fun. Oh yeah, somebody threw this out. That normally, if we were doing quote unquote normal Python, any text you want to see, you'd have to wrap in what's called a print statement. So in this case, we could say print. That's what it looks like, and this tells Python, oh, print this thing out. But Colab does this for us kind of for free. Is whatever the last value is in a cell, it'll just try to render in whatever way it can. Yeah, I'm not in you've caught me not in singing mode, so I'm not really gonna put on my theater kid vibes and go all out for a na 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 Batman. But I will say it quickly. Cool. Oh yeah, great question from Asgeda Spy. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yes, you can do multiple variables. So we could also say, here, I'll make this about me, my age. Oh, y'all, okay, I have a confession. I forgot how old I am. When you get to my advanced age, you stop keeping track. But I think last Global Hack Week, I said that I was 27. That's not true. I'm only 26. So yeah, I'm going to put 26 in there. But so you could say, hello, name, you are, and then my age, years old. And if we run this, you get, oh, I didn't actually run this before. Okay, cool. If we run this now, you get both my name and my age get interpolated into our format string. Great question. Hide current comment. Y'all, I'm using the comments more. It's good. I'm learning. I'm becoming a better streamer. Yes, Polar Void, I know I didn't run it. Oh my goodness. This is the thing, is sometimes I'll be confused and people will give me help in the chat and I'll be like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. And sometimes I'll be confused, but then I'll figure it out and people will still give me help in the chat, and then I'll attack you for helping me out. So I don't know, deal with it. Cool, let's see. I guess let's talk about length. Okay, so for a senior in high school drama class, I had to memorize the places you'll go, which I'll use for this next example. The places you'll go. So it's congratulations. First I'll just riff. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You've got brains in your head. You've got feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. You may find none you choose to go down, in which case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air. Out there things happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsy as you. And when things start happening, don't worry, don't stew. Just go right along. You'll start happening too. I like how just 2 seconds after I said I'm not entering theater kid mode, I just start reciting about the places you'll go. But I think I do that every Global Hack Week. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. So one little detail that I'll throw out is that we are able to use single quotes in there by using double quotes around it. So if I actually wrapped the entire thing in single quotes, Python would whine because it thinks that this should be the end of our string. So if you want to use single quotes inside of your string, just wrap it in double quotes on the outside. The other option you have is you can always just do a backslash, and that tells Python the character right after the backslash, don't interpret it normally. So for quotes, it's called escaping a quote mark, and it lets you use a single quote inside of a string. Say it again. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You've got brains in your head. You've got feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. I won't keep going on that one. But I do appreciate the enthusiasm. Oh yeah, the keyboard is actually, this is a quieter keyboard than I had before, but it is still kind of loud. I've been told I type angry, which I don't know. I guess I do. Okay, so we have this long string. Back to actually coding. We have this long string, and something that we will often want to do. Invalid syntax. Oh, right. So if you're escaping quotes, you have to escape every single quote. So I had 2 single quote marks or apostrophes, and I have to escape both of them. So we have our variable, the places you'll go. And one thing we can check is how many characters are inside of our string using what's called the len method, but we won't get into that. So in this case, there are 81 characters inside of our string. Another thing we can check is what is the character in a particular order. So for example, we could say, oh, what is the first character with index 1? And if we run it, you'll see, oh, it's an O. Now this is like the classic got you when introducing indices in Python, is in Python we start counting from 0. So the 1 index actually gives you the number 2 letter in the sequence, because C is actually thought of as the 0th letter. And so O becomes the letter number 1 and becomes letter number 2. So if I want to get the first letter in the whole thing, you would use 0, and that gives you C. Let's see. What if I use double quotes for strings? You can choose to do whatever you want, just keep it consistent. If you use the double quotes, then you are free to use single quotes inside of your string without escaping them. But on the other hand, you can't use double quotes inside your string without escaping them. So it's not really a big trade-off, or one's not really better than the other. Vimal asked, is Golang better than Python for ML AI, like for high computation calculation AI solutions? I'm actually really well situated to answer this question because in my work, I use Python and Go are probably the 2 biggest languages that I use. And no, I'm just going to come out and say Golang is not better for AI or ML than Python. I think the thing that Golang is really good for is if you are doing a lot of complex, like asynchronous networky operations. If you're building a system that is spread across a dozen different servers around the world, and they need to do like weird synchronization things, and you have lots of different threads running, Golang is really great for that. Golang is not better for machine learning and AI. I think Golang is a cool language, but I think Python is, I really think Python is one of the best languages for machine learning. The other ones that pop up, honestly, C++ comes up a decent bit because a lot of times, C++ is the classic quote unquote fast language that you'll build the stuff that really has to be fast in. R also comes up. R is for folks that are more on the stats side of machine learning, more on kind of like the business analytics and business intelligence stuff. Whereas if you first learn to program and then you come into it, you're more likely to use Python. But no shade against R. Python is really good. I am not as familiar with Julia, but I've heard really cool things about it. I can't really speak to it, but I've heard good things. I will say Julia is just not as big of a language. There's not as much adoption. Are you just saying nerdy in a nice way? No, I mean I don't know. They're all great. I'm sorry. I do have to stand athwart MATLAB. I know some people do like MATLAB, and it does do good things for people in very specific cases. The things that I'll say about MATLAB, one is MATLAB proper is incredibly expensive, and you need a really pricey license, which if you are currently at school or you're a professor is fine because your university will pay for it. But closed source and expensive, which is first grade. It also, I don't know, there are a lot of little things. I haven't used it in a while. I used it in college. I haven't used it since. a lot of little things that kind of grind my gears about MATLAB. It's like a really weird, like the paradigm of what the thing is that's doing the computation has always felt weird. Indices are really weird in MATLAB, but yeah, I've heard great things about Julia. Somebody was like, "Oh, are you trying to be nice about about different languages?" I'm not trying to be nice about MATLAB. I'll put MATLAB on blast. But yeah, I know a lot of people use it and they find it really useful. So I'll try to be diplomatic. Cool. So we've done some string stuff. Let's talk about Booleans. So we threw out that Booleans are either true or false, right? And I think what's interesting about Booleans is that we can do logic with them. So here's my classic example I use is we can create one variable called sunny in Seattle, which is false. It's not sunny right now. It's sunnier than it was yesterday, but we had our first kind of big rain of the season, which was great because it put out all the forest fires. But it's not sunny in Seattle right now. And then separately, we can create a variable called I want coffee, which is, of course, always true. So we have our two Booleans, and now we can do logic with them. And our classic logical operators are and, or, and not. So, for example, I could say, is it sunny in Seattle and I want coffee? And this is, of course, going to be false because an and is only true if both of the things around it are true. Kind of like how we use it in natural language. Separately, we can use an or, saying, is it sunny in Seattle or I want coffee? Are either of these things true? And this is true because one of them is true, and so our or statement ends up being true. And then the final one is the not operator, so I can say not I want coffee. So this is basically saying, is it true that I don't want coffee? And that's false. It's not true that I don't want coffee. So that just kind of flips whatever the truth signal is. If it says true, it's false. If it says false, it's true. That's kind of our basics of Booleans. Do we have any questions about Booleans? Are we feeling good about that? Oh, is MATLAB an MLH sponsor? Oops. Okay. I love MATLAB. MATLAB is great. No, I mean, opinion's my own, I guess I should say. I do really like, was it Mathematica? I think Mathematica is pretty good. And I feel like folks who use MATLAB and Mathematica are kind of similar circles. Yeah, we're not going to go into the exclusive or in Python. It just doesn't come up much for us. So we're gonna skip over that one. But I am going to throw down a challenge for you. So this is kind of the follow along and do the challenge. So the challenge is I want you to create a variable called my age that holds your age, and then a separate variable called my name, which holds your name. And then I want you to print out a string that says my name is my name and my age is my age. Only my name and my age are replaced with your name and your age. It turns out we actually kind of already did this together, but this is like if you're following along and you want to actually test, okay, can I write some Python code? Oh, not there. Then this is your chance. So I'll say challenge. And I'm gonna give myself 3 seconds to not talk because this is I always talk too much during Global Hack Week, and then by the end my throat is shot and I weasel out of doing the tour. So I'll give you like 30 seconds to do the challenge if you want. Question about how long the stream will be, and the answer is probably another 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Yeah, so folks are talking about the exclusive or, and so the one of the reasons that it's a little bit tricky is that the exclusive or is technically a bitwise operator in Python, and so if you are using it on things that have multiple bits, your results will not be particularly as you expected. Yep. Cool. Okay, so hopefully you've had a second to to do the challenge, yeah, I mean, we basically do this up above. And so we can say my age is not 27, I'm only 26. My name, it's Will. And then, yeah, if we wanted to create a string that says my name is Will and my age is 27, we could call it greeting. And yeah, we can use a format string, so we can say my name is, and then say my name, and my age is, and then inside those curly braces say my age. And if we run that and we could put greeting at the end, we can say run that. Boom. And Polaroid says you messed up your age again. What? No. Oh yeah. Oh no. Okay. So yeah, the truth is I copied this from the last time that I was prepping, which is back when I thought that I was 27. Okay. Cool stuff. Sweet. Now we're going to dive into lists. So we've played around with different variables and what they can do. We looked at integers and floating point numbers and strings and booleans, and we're building kind of our Python toolbox, which is great. And another really powerful tool that we're going to throw in there is the idea of collections. So a collection is just a variable that can have lots of different values in it. And our sort of most basic collection is called a list. And lists in Python are really quite simple. So the example I like to use for this is to create a list of cities. So just like a variable, it is a variable, we'll give it a name, we'll use our equal sign, and then after that, we'll put some square brackets. So the square brackets tell Python, hey, this is a list. And then inside the list, we can put any answers we want. Any values we want. So for example, I could put the cities that I've lived in. So Nashville and Boston. I was born in Boston and grew up in Nashville. And so this is our list of cities. And I can put cities at the bottom, print them out. Cool, we have two different values in here. But I can also, I moved to Seattle 3 years ago. So I could say cities.append. This is how you add a value to a list after it is created. And I could say Seattle. So it's the name of your list and then a dot and then append. And then inside some parentheses, you can put the new value you want to add. And so here you see that Seattle is added to the very end there. Lists preserve the order in which you add things, which is really nice. Another thing that you can do is just like with our strings, you can ask what is at a particular position. So you can say cities 0, and you get Nashville, and then you could say cities 2, and you get Seattle. So there's a way of pulling out different things from our list. Lists are cool. Let's see. Serious question. French press or pour over. So you should definitely come to our coffee hangout at 4 p.m. Pacific time. I will say my quick answer is pour over. I think you have more control over kind of what your coffee looks like. I think they're both good. I think that you can create a good tasting cup of coffee with either route. I will say French press often ends up being a little bit thicker bodied, and you can end up with a little bit of sludge in your coffee if you use French press, which is just not for everybody. And I'll say it's not really for me. But I have no shade towards either of them. I think French press is really, really an awesome strategy to make coffee just from a usability standpoint. You don't need any filters. You just need to rinse it out at the end of the day. You can use it to make French press or cold brew. So I have a French press. I actually have 4 French presses. I think they're good. But if I had to pick one, I would pick pour over. Let's see. Is it just a coincidence that you put Python Pro in your announcement, or is the guild actually getting known? Let's see. Oh, is this in my? I actually did not know that Python Pro was a guild. That was a coincidence. But that's cool. I'm glad there's there's a pro Python guild. I'm a fan. Let's see. Can you append to lists? So I think this is language here is a little bit confusing. But yes, you can. I think the word that I would use, you can concatenate 2 lists. So if I had list A and it had 1, 2, 3, and then I had list B and I had 4, 5, 6, something you could do is you could say list A plus list B, and that plus sign just says stick one right on the outside of the other. So it kind of adds them end to end. And yeah, like the word that I would use is that's concatenating two lists, but you are, yeah, functionally kind of appending all of the numbers in one to the first list. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about, I don't know, all the coffee chat really is, it's the perfect conversation to have later. I will say, I never feel like people need, like, I never hear saying, oh, you shouldn't feel good about that coffee that you enjoy. I'm like, whatever kind of coffee you like is great. I think that sometimes it can be fun to dive really deep on this thing that you drink every day. But I don't think, I think that my enjoyment of coffee is increased from my nerddom just because I enjoy being a nerd about coffee. I don't think that like the coffee that I drank before I got really nerdy about it was bad, right? I thought it was, you know, I mean, it's like simpler. But yeah, it's not a like you need to be really nerdy about your coffee, otherwise you suck. That's just like a silly idea. But it is really fun to learn more about it. Yes, yeah, you can put lists inside of lists as well. Yeah, so if you had, and you actually don't have to just put one kind of thing into a list. So you can have, you know, you can have a list called X that has a 1 and then an A, and then a list called Y that maybe has, you know, 2 and Z. And you can actually say literally lit X append Y. And then if you look at what's inside X, you see first you have 1, and then you have A, and then you have a list containing 2 and Z. So you can get really heterogeneous with how you construct your lists. And Python does not complain. Okay, fun. Yeah, send me a Discord invite. I'll admit, I'm just like not very. I don't really engage that much on Discord. But I'm happy to join. I'm a big person who is pro Python. So yeah, I will click the button. Yes. So we're getting really deep into lists, and everybody's throwing out their favorite method or function, which is great. But yes, there's also a method called extend. And so if I recall, extend accepts multiple parameters. So like, let's take our list A. I'm really letting y'all drive this stream more than I usually do. Normally I'm like, hey, I have a plan. I have examples. I'm like, yes. So you could say list A extend. And I believe you can throw in another list. Does that work for us? And if I say list A, yeah, so you can pass in a list to extend. And so this basically says, not just temporarily show me these two lists together, but actually take all of the things inside list B and append them to list A. And that's extend. Let's see. Good stuff. Okay, cool. That's enough on lists. We're going to turn to possibly an even more important collection called a dictionary. And dictionaries are all based around this idea of key value pairs. I think the example of like a real world dictionary is actually a helpful example to think of. So in real world dictionaries, you have a key, which is a word, and you have the value, which is its definition, right? And in a dictionary, because everything is in alphabetical order, you can locate the word or the key that you're looking for relatively quickly, right? You can kind of triangulate and do a binary search and find, you know, you're looking for the word ukulele, you can go to the U section, and pretty quickly you can find ukulele, and its whole definition is there for you. And that's this idea of a key value pair. So a dictionary, it's the word, its definition. But in Python, a dictionary can have any kinds of key values that you want. So let's say I want to look at city populations. So we can, instead of using the square brackets, use curly brackets. So now each of my key value pairs is going to be on a different line. So my first key is going to be Nashville. And the population of Nashville, let's see, population of Nashville, let's say 692,000. 692,000. Then we have Boston, and let's find the population of Boston, and 689,000, okay. And so what you see here is we have first our key, which is right there, and then a colon, and then whatever we want our value to be. And then just like in the list, we separate our key value pairs with commas. Fun fact here, Python allows you to end your collection with a terminating comma, which I actually think is a really, really good thing to do. Because if you come back later and you copy and paste a line and you're like, okay, let's paste that, it still works. So you can include a comma at the end of your dictionary or list, which is super snazzy if you ask me. So now we can say city populations, and boom, we get Nashville, 692,000, Boston, 689,000. Now, why is this useful? Well, this is useful because now we can, if we have a key, we can ask the dictionary what the associated value is. So we can say city populations Nashville and give it, instead of an index like 0 or 1, we can give it the index Nashville, and it will return to us the population that we stored as the value. So that is super neat. Polar void. This is actually, it's like one of, I think, the most underrated things about Python is the allowing the terminating comma. It's like one of my most common things when people ask me to review their code. I'm like, yeah, you should just put terminating commas in all of your lists and your dictionaries, because it makes it a lot easier to not run into little bugs. Awesome. So how do we add something to our dictionary? Well, it's pretty easy. All you do is, if I want to add Seattle, I can say city populations, and I act as if the value already exists. So I say Seattle, I put it inside those square brackets, and then I just assign something to it. Then I misspelled populations, and so we can see population of Seattle. And it is 741,000. So that's basically saying, dictionary, create an entry called Seattle and store in that entry 741,000. And so now, if we come down here and we print city populations, populations, I can spell, we see we get Nashville, Boston, and Seattle all in a row. Good stuff. Polar Void says there's a caveat with using square brackets with dict, though, right? I don't know. I can imagine lots of little caveats. I don't know. I mean, like, one thing to throw out is if you ask for a key that doesn't exist in a dictionary. So let's say I ask for New York, and if I didn't actually put it in there, then Python is going to complain and yell at me, right? Something that you can do to get around this is, if you're in, first of all, you can check to see if your key is in the dictionary first. So you could say, well, I don't want to jump ahead because we haven't covered if statements yet. Actually, what a great place to introduce if statements. And I could say if New York in the city populations. So this is basically just saying, Python, if the key New York is in city populations, then you could say print city populations New York. This is basically saying, if the key New York exists in city populations, then print out its population. And so you can see, okay, here it didn't run, but then if we say city populations New York, and we store, I don't know, a really big number. I don't even care about New York. I shouldn't say that on stream because like everybody at MLH is in New York. I love y'all. It's a great city. I'm actually going to New York in like 2 weeks. Now, if we do that, it'll actually print it out for us. Another little tool you can use is the get method. So you can say city populations.get, and we can put in Seattle, and this will be fine. This is normal. But you can actually give get a default value. So you could say, if Seattle is not in there, say, maybe we could just return a string called not found. Or you could include like a default value like 0. So now if we ask for San Francisco, because it didn't find San Francisco in our dictionary, it returns 0 as kind of a default. So the get method is very fun as well. But I don't know if that's the caveat that you were thinking about with square brackets and dictionaries, but I don't know. Let me know what you're thinking. Awesome. Let's see. Another detail that we can do is getting all the keys out of our dictionary. So remember, normally if we just print city populations, we get all of it. But if we just want our keys, we can say .keys, and this gives us what is basically like a list. It gives us just the keys sort of in a sequence. Technically, it is a dict keys thing. It is a kind of a special data type. But if you want, you can turn it into a list just by saying list and wrapping that all in parentheses. So there you get straight up a list of all of your keys. You can also do this with values. So we can say dot values, and that gives us just our values. Okay, awesome. I'm going to give my voice another break, and I'm going to give you another challenge. So I'm going to say, let's see. Let's create a dictionary with the names of you and a couple of family members or friends as the keys, and their ages as the values. And then after you create that dictionary, give yourself a birthday by adding 1 to your age, and then print out the resulting dictionary. Let's see. Text. Challenge. Boom. And I'm actually going to run down and get some more water to stay hydrated, but I will see you all very soon. And we'll probably, I don't know, we'll do loops and functions, and then we might call it a day. All right, we'll be back in like 13 seconds. All right, I'm back. Challenge time over. Oh my God, Nagi, you counted down? Hey, I think I actually was about 13, more than 13 seconds. To be clear, when I came up here, the last thing that I saw was 13, but you didn't put 12. All right, y'all are unhinged, but I'm very much here for the energy. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna create a dictionary. We'll call it ages. And we'll say will, and as previously established, I'm only 26. And then we can add, my brother's name is John, and he is, let's see, is it after August? Yeah, I think he's 28 now, I guess. We can add that terminating comma. And so now we're going to give me a birthday. So we'll say ages. We'll access will like this. And this is a fun one, is we can just say plus equals 1. And then we can print out ages. As you see, I was 26, and now the dictionary says I'm 27. Is Dumbledore canonically 114? Let's see. When was Dumbledore born? 1881. Pretty old. Pretty old. Okay, awesome. We're going to look at loops and then functions, and then we're going to call it a day. Okay, so loops. So the basic case for loops is when there's something that you want to do, but you want to do it multiple times. So a basic example of this, often in Python, we base our loops around lists that we have. So I'll create a list called folks on stream. And let's see, we got Dead Nuggy. We got 404 not found, 19. We got Polar Void, which I am still not going to spell correctly. Is that how you spell it? I don't know. Let's see, one more. Who else is out there? Drop something in the chat really quickly. Aphrodite 050202. 0502. I'm really going for realism with the usernames here. So what if I want to say you're all the best, but I want to say it individually? Well, so really, if I was going to do this sort of like one by one. Okay. Fancy Applebee's and Vimal also get in there. And your Rapture. Okay. I'll add a couple more. And this is actually great because it proves the point that if you have a lot of things, you want to be able to do it like you don't want to have to write code for every single person you want to greet. Let's see, fancy Applebee, Rio Rapture, and Vimal. That's all right. I'm sorry. I gotta cut it off there. But you're all great. Okay. Two more and that's it. Then we're done. Cyber Gaian. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Asgade Spy. Oh my goodness. Pranav 16. All right, that's it. So we could do, and this is actually a great example because there now are so many names. And because one thing I could do is I could just say print Dead Nuggy is great, and then I could copy and paste this, and I could say for not found 19 is great, and I could run this, right? But if I want to do this for everybody, that just takes a lot of time and a lot of code, and every time somebody joins, I have to add it again. Yeah, no, that did get out of hand. I should cut it off faster next time. But so what I can do if I want to just say all these folks are great is I can say for username in folks on stream, and then inside this for loop, I can say print, and I can say print, we'll use a format string, and I'll say username is great. For not found, weren't you here for the last little moment we had? Terminating commas in Python, they're the best. Yeah, Python lets you do that. And it's actually really, really helpful because you can copy and paste lines without causing errors. Okay, so now if I run this, boom, Dead Nuggy is great. For not found 19 is great. Polar Void is great. Aphrodite 050202 is great. Fancy Applebee is great. Rio Rapture is great. Vimal Vatsa is great. Cyber Gaian is great. Asgeda Spy is great. Pranav 16 is great. The loop does all the work for me. So what it's doing is it's running this line of code for every single username in the list that I have. And so when you have some bit of work you want to do for lots of different inputs, a loop kind of lets you batch it up and do it all kind of together. I guess another thing we can look at is we can go back to our. I'm glad you guys like the example. We can go back to our name age dictionary. So what if instead of going through everybody one by one and giving them a birthday, I just wanted to give everybody a birthday at once. So in this case, I could say for name in ages. And first of all, I'm just going to print out name. So something to realize is when you loop through a dictionary, by default, what you get is the key, right? Remember, all of our names were the keys in our ages dictionary. In fact, I'll just copy it down here so we can see it. So we create a dictionary, and what we get when we just loop through it is the names. But if we want to actually edit the dictionary, we can use those names to do so. So this is kind of us giving everybody a birthday, and we can say ages name plus 1. So what this will do is it'll loop through every name in the dictionary and then run this line of code for every single name. So if at the bottom we print out ages, we get Will is now 27 and John is now 29. Right on. I think that's all I got on loops. And we can jump on to functions and then we can call it a day. So in the same way that loops are really useful when you want to do something several times, functions can help us do a similar thing. So loops are great if you have a list of stuff that you want to loop through. We didn't touch while loops, but I don't even think we're going to use while loops. But while loops exist, ranges are good. Yeah, we can touch on ranges. So sometimes you have a list of things you want to loop through and do work for everything in your list. And sort of your basic for loop is great for that. Sometimes you don't actually have a list of stuff you want to loop through, but you know you want to do something a certain number of times. And Python gives us a super handy range function for this, which we haven't talked about functions yet, but bear with me. So what if I want to just count from 0 to 10? So what I can say is for I in range 11, and then inside our loop say print I. And if I do this, we get out 0, what? Where's the mouse? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So note that inside the range function, you have to give it one number above where you want to go up to, because basically range will count up to 11, but not actually use the last number that you give it. And so that's just a handy dandy range function. You can put in two numbers, so it'll count from something to something else. So in this case, 4 and 11. You can, if you really need to, you can tell it to count by something. So you can say count by 2s. So if you put a 2 in the middle, it'll say, okay, I'll count. Oh wait, no, there's a step go at the end. It does. So you can say start, stop, and then the step at the end. So basically count from 4 to 11, but count by 2s. And so this is lots of things you can do with the range function. But the most basic thing is if you just want to do something 4 times, like even if I just want to print out, thanks for tuning in. This just lets me do that 4 times. So the range function is really great for repeating a bit of code. Yeah, I don't think we're not going to go into tuples or sets just for lack of time, but they might come up later in the week. Yeah, no, it is something 404.found19 is raising this, that in most programming languages, if you add a comma at the very end of your list or your array or something, it'll give you an error because it likes, the kind of classic pretty, there are commas in between things, but not at the end. But in Python, they let you do it, and I think it's really useful. Cool. Yeah, there are lots of concepts in Python. Python is it's a big language, right? There are so many pieces of it. So there are things like tuples that tuples, generators, decorators, you will probably use them before you realize you are using them. But a lot of them we won't go into deep on. Fun stuff. Functions, yeah, we're gonna do functions, and then we're gonna be done. Oh, does Rust support terminating new line? Oh, sorry, I'm not that familiar with Rust. Terminating comma. Okay, so the final thing that we're going to talk about today is functions, and a function is basically a way of the way I like to describe it is writing a recipe in your cookbook that you can reuse again and again. So the sort of very basic function that we're going to write is a function that adds 2 numbers together. And it's not really useful because you could just do this in a single line. Then Nuggy, stay hydrated. But it kind of shows us what a function can do. So I'm going to write the function, and then we're going to talk about how to use it and the different parts of it. So I'll say define my adding function, and we will accept a number A and a number B. And then we will say my sum equals A plus B, and then we will return my sum. And then later, if we say my adding function 2 and 5, then we get out 7. Okay, so hopefully the broad logic of this makes sense. You're like, oh, okay, we're writing a bit of code that adds 2 numbers together. But we'll walk through sort of the specifics. So every function definition starts with the keyword def. It's how you tell Python you're writing a function. And the idea is we're basically recording a recipe that can be used again and again. And our recipe name or our function name is my adding function. So then the next thing in between these parentheses is basically our ingredients list. And we tell Python, hey, if you want to use this recipe, I need two things. I need something called A, and I need something called B. But we don't know what those are yet, so we're just calling them A and B. Then you put a colon, which basically says all of the code after this is going to be indented in. So you see these spaces are really important, telling Python this code is part of our function. And we do some logic in the middle. We say A plus B, and we assign that to a variable called mySum. And then the last thing we do is we return back the finished product. So this is like at the end of the recipe, after you've made the cake, you get to have a cake, right? And so in this case, we return a number that has been summed. And so when we call it later by using its name, we actually give it the ingredients we want it to use. So we say, use 2 and 5 as your ingredients for this recipe. And Python uses them and gives us back 7. And so it does the work for us. Now, not every function has to have all of these parts. Some functions won't accept any parameters or any ingredients. And some functions won't actually give you anything back. Not every function has to have a return value. But this is sort of our classic example of a function. And you can do much more kind of interesting, complex things in your function, but this is kind of a simple example to get the point across. For 4.519, so good to have you. Good night, get some sleep, take care of yourself. Self-care is very important.
Okay, radical.
And actually, I think 4.4.found picked a great time to go to bed because I think we're basically done. We will, in the coming 3 sessions, there's a lot to look out for, a lot of fun to be had, but we're going to be looking at lots of different libraries. The broad sketch is tomorrow. We're going to look at all the data that we brought together in that form. I'll give some shout outs. And we're going to go about building our sort of first basic machine learning model to try to identify sarcasm. And that's going to be kind of what most of tomorrow is. In the next session after that, we're going to be using sort of all of our grown-up tools to build a really, really powerful model. And then on the last day, I think I might actually take it to, we might look at model explainability and get kind of philosophical about how do we know what our model is doing, and really try to go deep on these things. But that's kind of our overall guidelines. Yes, the session is getting recorded. You can find it on Twitch. I didn't make any big errors, so we won't have to delete this one, which is great. Now, the final 2 things that I'll say before we log off is, first of all, this is something I started doing more last time, but I'm going to drop a form, and I would love feedback on how things went for you. As I mentioned last time, people said they wanted to learn more about natural language processing, and that is actually why this time we're doing sarcasm, is because folks said, oh, hey, that would be a cool thing to do. And so I really, really appreciate your feedback. So I'm going to drop a really short form just for folks to let me know how it went, if it was too fast or not fast enough, if there was anything that was really helpful or anything that could be skipped. Boom. So that's thing number 1, is please fill out the form and let me know how you enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, put them in that chat, in that form, and I'll answer them next time, which is a really helpful thing to get questions answered. The other thing is I guess now it's really in 3-ish hours, 3.5 hours. I'm going to be doing the coffee live stream, which will be a lot of fun. I know we have some coffee nerds on this stream, so please tune in. We're going to be talking about how brew temperature affects the taste of coffee. So it'll be a good chat. But Polaroid asks, what did change do we need to decide this time? Yeah, so historically, I guess I'll throw this out. Historically, on stream, there's been some kind of thing that you get to weigh in on. So, I think a couple of times y'all picked what color I dyed my hair. Last time, y'all got to pick what word I tattooed on my arm, and y'all picked blahage. It was a temporary tattoo, so it's gone now. But yeah, it's a good question. I actually didn't have anything for this time. The first thing that comes into my mind is at the end of this week, I'm flying to Boston actually for Halloween. And have y'all seen those like YouTube videos or like, I know a lot of TikToks actually, where people like bring random items across the country on planes. Maybe we'll talk about this next time. But maybe if you want to comment in the form a random item that I should bring to my boyfriend Richard, if you're like, oh yeah, bring him a pumpkin or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll make that a thing next time. But no competition as of now. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. It was a blast to see everyone. I appreciate that you let me spiel about linguistics for 30 minutes, and I think hopefully it'll be useful as we get into machine learning and natural language processing next time. So yeah, the next session is tomorrow. You can check the time on the schedule, and I am so excited to see you for the rest of the week. So yeah, happy hacking and happy Global Hack Week, y'all.